Welcome back. Now, a year ago, South Africa embarked on a new political chapter with the formation of the Government of National Unity. The GNU formed after the ANC lost its majority in the May 2024 elections, which resulted to 10 political parties from across the country coming together to chart a new path forward for the country. And joining us to reflect on these past 12 months is Adrian Saville from the Gordan Institute of Business Science. Adrian, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. A year into the Government of National Unity, and we can definitely say that it hasn't been smooth sailing. And let's start by reflecting on those 12 months, right? Where the parties successful in their mandate, or is it too soon to tell?
I mean, in one part, they've been very successful in the first instance, forming a government of national unity. That's no mean feat under any circumstances to establish a unity government. And second, being able to hold that form to this point. The success will be measured ultimately by the economic, infrastructural, social performance under this administration. But just from a political perspective, the fact that they've been able to coalesce and hold that formation to this point, hats off. I think it speaks volumes about the political maturity of the country.
And can we start holding them accountable for the kind of economic data we've been seeing, looking just at GDP figures and unemployment figures that aren't really looking good, considering that also under coalition governments, growth tends to slow?
Yeah, so, working backwards through your observation, unfortunately, coalition governments tend to produce a combination of things. They tend to produce slower growth, higher inflation, higher unemployment, and higher levels of debt with larger budget deficits. So, from an economic perspective, generally speaking, you don't want a coalition, but, that might be better than, a more unfortunate or more unkind outcome. So we don't have the counterfactual of what might otherwise have been if there isn't this coalition government, just to keep that in mind. But, you're absolutely right. The numbers are disappointing, but no more disappointing than they have been in the previous 5 years or even further. We're sitting essentially with the past 10, 15 years being absolutely flatline economic growth compared to population growth. A very, very disappointing decade and a half in terms of economic performance. For this to sit up and start to make meaningful impact in terms of the economic and social ills and ailments, we need to see the policy words starting to turn into institutional delivery.
And that's what was going to be my next question, because when we look at confidence levels, we saw this wave of optimism post the election, prints like the RMB-BER Business Confidence Index, as well as the Saki Business Confidence Index. From there, we saw, improving morale into the second half of 2024. It's been interesting to see those confidence levels somewhat plateau into 2025. Is this just a reflection that businesses, investors now want to see, some of those initiatives starting to filter through into the economy?
Absolutely. And I think there's, first to focus on the domestic. There have been some very important reforms achieved, and in saying that, I'm thinking immediately of the improved electricity supply security, which has been a very powerful and effective outcome of public and private coalition or partnership. Very effective. If I'd said to you this time a year or a year and a half ago, we will have essentially, we will be on a more or less permanent state of always on electricity, that would have seemed absolutely, fanciful or outrageous, yet here we are. So there's been, at least one very important institutional reform, or infrastructure reform, sorry, more correctly, infrastructure reform. The one that's missing in action is Transnet.
Yeah.
And here, Michelle Phillips has got an absolutely gargantuan task. I do not envy her, but I'm grateful that she is at the helm and making inroads. But that's a big elephant to eat, and much more work is needed there. Infrastructure reform is absolutely critical in order to see confidence in South Africa improve. So we've got to step forward in terms of the policy reform, the electricity supply. The negative has been external factors, and in particular, the global events of 2025, rewinding to January, February, where the tariffs are announced.
And what have you made of how some situations have been handled within the GNU? Most recently, we had, that budget impasse that really tested the stability of the GNU. Some are saying, this is normal and this is how coalition work. Others are saying, things should have been handled differently.
I belong to the second school of thought, that things should have been handled differently, that it's a bit like, in a family, the parents can fight behind closed doors, don't fight in front of the children. So the fact that we couldn't settle this critical issue of budget injects a fresh dose of uncertainty into the environment. That's going to get people to, adopt more of a wait and see approach. Let's see how this pans out. In a country that is desperately starved of investment confidence and investment capital. Now, the world is awash. There is an abundance of capital, and South Africa is, at face value, a very obvious destination and a very attractive destination if we could just get out of our own way. And so, unfortunately, I think that budget, the fact that we went to 3 rounds of deliberation on the budget, that was avoidable.
All right, Adrian, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights. That was Adrian Saville from Gordan Institute of Business Science.